Hi guys, welcome back to another video. This is 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. Um, I'm actually moving to the United States, as you might know, Texas, and I'm from England, and I have no idea about the country at the moment. Obviously, I have some idea of movies, and also I might be teaching in the United States, so I have some idea. But if you want to follow for more, I'm going to do reactions when I'm there, and also street interviews and stuff like that. Everything from reactions to street interviews, the culture, the food. Let's press that space bar and get into this video.
The United States often draws a lot of flack from the rest of the world for everything.
I'm going to tell you if these misconceptions are what I experienced growing up alongside my British friends and stuff like that.
From its foreign policy to the way it runs its domestic affairs. In fact, it seems like there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States. Everyone has an opinion. Even in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum. But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even America's own politicians can't seem to stop talking about how messed up things are. Well, today we're going to take a deeper look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are?
I hope
I'm
not.
Mike with this 25, and these are 25
Well,
common
outside looking in, it
misconceptions
does
about
look
the
like
United
that.
States that simply aren't true. And as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and two European citizens that relocated to the United States. It's written to be as fair as possible. No, I'm not two Europeans. Or am I?
No, you're not.
All right. Let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. Let's be honest,
True,
they
it's
never
true.
studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same
I do.
continent.
I do.
It turns
Czech
out that
Republic
all
now.
of us are pretty bad at geography. You'd think America would be better at it, however, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true. But who doesn't? Germany, France, Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy on each other and ourselves.
I do like
Moving
that
on,
spine.
America has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world
There's worse
watches it,
racist countries out there.
sometimes more
Probably
than their own media.
80%. Probably 80% of the rest of the world is more racist, and that's only because they're less developed, maybe like the Middle East, Eastern Europeans, Chinese, Indians to other people. Like, there's racism everywhere. United States are doing it. We're doing pretty good.
So when something super bad happens in other countries,
I'm not been there though, so maybe I'm going to be, if anyone wants, if anyone wants to prove me wrong in the comments, and when I go to Texas, I'll also make a video on this.
it might not even make the back page. Next, it's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK.
Yeah,
Moving
true.
on. America.
It costs about £50, £40 to go just under 2 hours to London. That's about $60 to go an hour and a half to London from Portsmouth, where I'm from. Hour and a half, which is about 90 miles.
Does slash has slash is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws, cultures, and quirks. Some states have the death penalty, some don't. Some have strict gun laws, and some don't. Some have free college, some don't. Some have tax, and yeah, some don't. So just like you can't say Europe is so and so, you can't say the same about the US. As an additional note, the states are far more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some states pass legislation that directly contradicts the federal government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are. To further establish the fact that
Get
America
rid of
isn't
those
a
admins,
single
Tom.
entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language. But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France or the UK or Italy or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual. Now, let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country. There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note, Americans are fat. You ever been to the UK
True.
lately? There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery.
Well,
Yes,
fab.
America does have an obesity problem,
America's a lot
but
worse.
not all citizens are involved in it. I am. A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything. There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same. The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation: the problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively. And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here. By this same logic, Paris,
This is the
Brussels,
one
London,
thing that I'm
Madrid, and
worried
almost
about
every
because
other
of the
city in
media.
Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most
Oh,
Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in a life of our stereotypes: guns, fast food, and freedom. What I'm
freedom.
saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question: have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely
I agree with that, but I'd say USA is more patriotic, which is a good thing. People don't really fly the flag in the UK. It's starting to change. Australia, um, they don't fly the flag. I'm here in Australia now. They don't fly the flag much out here. They're very laid back by the beach. They ain't got time for that.
patriotic, but so is the rest of the world, as they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample. But in their defense, many times, they're right.
I've only met three
Yes, this
Americans.
can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No? Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative, by our European representative. I love all of you.
We don't smile much.
Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account: reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another. That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing: In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning. This list sounds great coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer. Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer. Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer. Oh, what do I mean by still? Huh, I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer.
Yeah,
The
I know
word
that one.
soccer is an
We
abbreviation
did
of
invent the word soccer.
association and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometimes using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as brekkers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could
No
you
more
not?
soccer anymore.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just leave the window open? Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the
That's not true from
2003
England.
European heat wave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning. While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures, especially since children and the elderly are very susceptible. Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Open
weird.
windows. Ugh.
I'm from England, so colder
Moving
climate.
into the top nine, that's the weird number. Top nine. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25 nice percent of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25 nice percent of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English. Actually, both British English and American English have diverged from a common 16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American English is closer to the original than British English. For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes.
Okay.
This is only one example, but it goes to show that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally
I'll
different
compare
note,
slang
did
words
you
and how
know
it
that
really
Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that in America, you have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the US and Europe is that if you want to live in the suburbs in the US, you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next one is
I
just
don't Texas, so
offensive.
it's a bit better.
Americans are all dumb
The
rednecks.
suburbs.
While there are certainly Americans who fit this stereotype, the vast majority don't.
Redneck.
Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from Europeans in any significant way. Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland.
Very true.
Um, Fair warning, the last five on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China. This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much, much more.
Okay.
Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans
Fair enough.
liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. All right.
People that say USA is worse than China and Russia is stupid because Without America policing the world right now, would be in a pretty bad situation. They're not perfect, but what's the alternative? Imagine if Russia took over the whole of America and then we were under that.
Number four is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places, the
I
only
believe that.
people
I
you'll
knew
ever
that.
see carrying guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in Switzerland than you ever would in America. Okay. We admit that, like most stereotypes, there is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right wingers, most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays. This next one sounds like a legit
I
stand
believe
up
that.
joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America.
It's a lot though,
As with
right?
most things that concern America, they're wrong. You can't be denied emergency medical care in the US. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath. The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans. The average household debt in the US, OECD,
Damn.
is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%. In Sweden, 173. And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%. So, what are some misconceptions about the US that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to put a stereotype to rest? Let us know in the comments below, or tweet your answer to us at list25. And as an American, I apologize for everything going on right now. Don't worry, 2020 is just around the corner.
It's okay, bro.
Oh.
Right, guys, there was actually a few things there that I didn't know, but there was a lot of them that I kind of knew. Not knew, but like I was like, fair enough. I didn't think everyone's gonna have guns walking around. I didn't think everyone was fat. I mean, you have a lot of fat people, but you know, I'm gonna watch so many more of these videos because I need to learn before I get there, and I'm gonna compare, okay, and then I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna do some interviews as well. Okay, but yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Obviously, this is a very new channel, so if you could subscribe, that'd be lovely, and watch the journey because this time next year when I go to America, I should have at least 100 of you. All right, okay, thanks, guys.